I was visiting my son after a stroke left me unable to drive. His wife looked at me with disgust and said, "I didn't marry you. I don't want to be a nurse." My son looked tired and said, "She has a point." They put me on a bus that afternoon. I sat alone for 3 hours with a bag of medicine on my lap. 9 months later, when their own health crisis hit, they found out what I'm 67. I had a stroke last year. It didn't kill me, but it messed me up enough that I can't drive anymore, and I can't do a lot of the things I used to. My right hand doesn't always work, my balance is bad, and I slur when I talk if I get too tired. I live in Peoria, Illinois, and I was doing okay on my own until that stroke hit me like a freight train one morning while I was trying to pour cereal. After that, things changed fast. I spent 6 weeks in the hospital and then 4 more in rehab. I was lucky to survive and even luckier to walk, but I couldn't go back to living the same way. I needed help just for a little while. Someone to help with groceries, make sure I was taking my meds on time, maybe help me get to the bathroom when I was dizzy. My son Marcus called while I was still in rehab. He lives in St. Charles, Missouri with his wife Lila. I hadn't seen them in almost a year. We weren't close like we used to be, but I figured he was busy with work, life, all that. He said, "Dad, why don't you come stay with us for a bit? Just until you're back on your feet." It felt like a lifeline. I didn't ask. He offered. I didn't have much to bring. 1 suitcase with clothes and a plastic grocery bag full of pill bottles that the nurse packed for me. They sent a lift to pick me up. Lila didn't come. When I got there, Marcus met me in the driveway. He didn't hug me, just sort of nodded like I was an Amazon package. Inside, the house was cold. Not temperature-wise, just cold. No welcome, no warmth. Lila barely looked at me when I walked in. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone. Marcus showed me to a tiny room that used to be their laundry room. There was a futon in there with a thin blanket and a pillow that smelled like plastic. He said, "This is all we've got, Dad. Hope it's okay." I said, "Sure. It's fine." I was trying to be grateful. The first few days were rough, but I tried to stay positive. I took my pills, tried to help out where I could, and stayed quiet. But Lila didn't like me being there. That much was obvious. She wouldn't talk to me. If she did, it was one word at a time. I offered to help fold laundry once, and she took the towels from me like I'd spilled something on them. When I tried to sit with them at dinner, she'd suddenly forget to make enough food and ask Marcus to go get takeout. By the 4th day, I could tell she was done with me. I had a dizzy spell that morning. I stood up too fast and had to grab the counter to stay upright. Lila saw it happen. Her face twisted like I'd dropped dead fish on the floor. She didn't say, "Are you okay?" or "Do you need help?" She looked me straight in the eye and said, "I didn't marry you. I don't want to be a nurse." My heart dropped. Not just from what she said, but how she said it. Like I was some stranger who wandered in off the street. I turned to Marcus, thinking he'd say something. Anything. He looked tired. He rubbed his face and said, "She has a point, Dad." That stung more than the stroke. More than the rehab. More than anything. They didn't wait a day. They bought me a bus ticket that same afternoon. Marcus handed it to me without looking at me in the eye. "Sorry, Dad. It's just not working out." I sat on that Greyhound bus for 3 hours, gripping my plastic bag of pills like it was the only thing left in the world I could count on. I stared out the window the whole time. I couldn't cry. I couldn't even feel anything at that point. I just sat there empty. When I got home, I could barely make it up the steps to my porch. I slipped trying to reach the door. Doris, my neighbor from across the street, saw me and rushed over. She helped me inside, sat me down, made me a bowl of soup. She called her nephew who fixed the door that wouldn't latch right. My fishing buddy Pete came by the next day with groceries. The church ladies dropped off casseroles. People I barely talked to stepped up more than my own son. That was the day something in me hardened. I wasn't going to let that happen again. After I got settled back into my house, I started doing things differently. I didn't tell anyone what happened at Marcus's place. I didn't want pity, but something changed inside me. It wasn't just about being hurt, it was about making sure no one could ever toss me aside again. I started seeing a local attorney. A guy named Rick. He was younger than me but sharp, and he didn't talk down to me. I told him I wanted to protect my assets, what little I had. My house was paid off. I had around $180,000 between my pension savings, some old CDs, and a life insurance policy I'd paid into for years. Nothing crazy, but enough to live out my life if I was careful. Rick helped me set up a living trust. I gave durable power of attorney to Doris and Pete. They were real people who had actually shown up for me when I needed it most. I also changed my will. I removed Marcus from it completely. No explanations. No warnings. Just gone. I left a letter with Rick explaining everything in case it was ever questioned later. He said it was airtight. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Then came the twist. 9 months later, I got a phone call from Marcus. I almost didn't answer it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey, Dad," he said. His voice was quiet, shaky. "I know it's been a while. Oh, we've had kind of a situation." I didn't say anything. He went on. "Lila had a seizure. Out of nowhere. She was at work and she collapsed. They ran tests, but they still don't know why it happened. They think it might be neurological. She's different now. Slower. Confused. Can't be alone too long." Still, I didn't say anything. I just waited. He finally got to the real reason he called. "I know things ended badly, but we're struggling. The hospital bills are piling up. Her job was our insurance, and she lost it after missing too many days. I'm trying to work extra hours, but the caregiver we hired charges $400 a week just for part-time help. I was wondering if maybe you could help us, just until we get back on our feet." There it was. I sat there, listening to my son, my only child, ask for help after the way they tossed me aside like I was nothing. I didn't yell. I didn't swear. I just asked, "Do you remember putting me on that bus?" He was quiet. "Do you remember what Lila said to me?" I asked. "She didn't mean it, Dad." We were stressed. She looked at me like I was garbage. "And you agreed with her?" He didn't say anything. Then I told him the truth. I already took care of everything. My finances are locked up. Even if I wanted to help you, I couldn't. I made sure no one could ever take advantage of me again, not even you. Silence. Then he said, "But I'm your son." I said, "Exactly." Then I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. A week later, Doris came over with a worried look. "You better come see this," she said. She handed me her phone. It was a Facebook post. Lila's mother had posted a long, dramatic rant about me. She said I was a selfish old man who abandoned his son when he needed help most. She said I was rotting in that little house like a coward while her daughter was suffering. I didn't even have a Facebook account. Then Marcus started messaging Pete, telling him I was losing it and asking if he could convince me to rethink things. Pete told him to shove it. That was when I knew this wasn't over. They weren't just asking for help anymore, they were trying to pressure me into guilt. And worse, they were trying to flip the story. But I wasn't going to let them. Not this time. After the Facebook post, things got ugly. I didn't answer the door for a few days. Not because I was afraid, because I needed time to think. Time to figure out just how far Marcus and Lila were willing to go. I didn't trust them anymore. Not with anything. And now it looked like they were trying to make me the villain in a story they created. A week later, I got mail that set everything in motion. It was from the Missouri Department of Social Services. A notice. Apparently, someone had submitted a claim saying I had financially abandoned my son and his wife, both in a state of crisis. The letter said if I had been legally supporting them, or if they could claim I was supposed to be, it could affect my state benefits and put me under review for possible support obligations. I read that letter 3 times. My hands shook. I hadn't signed anything like that. I wasn't their dependent. They weren't mine. I'd never lived with them long enough for anything legal to count. But someone had submitted paperwork that made it sound like I had agreed to support them. It was fraud. Plain and simple. I called Rick, my lawyer, right away. He said it wasn't the first time he'd seen something like this. Adult children trying to pull financial tricks on elderly parents after cutting them off emotionally. It was low. Real low. He filed a response with all my trust documents, medical records from rehab, and proof that Marcus and Lila had removed me from their home. We even got statements from Doris and Pete about what they saw when I came back. Weak, shaking, dumped at the door with no warning. I thought that would be the end of it. But then I got a visit from Adult Protective Services. A social worker showed up at my door. Said she got an anonymous tip that I was being neglected and might be mentally unwell. That someone had reported I was confused, forgetting things, and possibly being manipulated by neighbors for financial reasons. I knew exactly who sent that. Marcus and Lila were trying to flip the script. Again, they figured if they couldn't get money out of me, maybe they could get the state involved. Maybe they thought if I got declared incompetent, they could take control of my trust. But they didn't count on one thing. I was ready. I sat that social worker down and gave her every piece of paperwork I had. Every note, every legal document. I even showed her the futon picture I took when I was staying at their place, the laundry room bed. I told her everything calmly and clearly. I didn't raise my voice once. She listened. She took notes. She asked if she could talk to Pete and Doris. I said yes. 3 days later, she closed the case. No concerns. But now it was war, and I wasn't about to lose. After the social worker closed the case, I thought maybe Marcus and Lila would finally back off. But I underestimated how desperate people get when their whole world starts falling apart. A month later, I got a call from Rick again. He sounded different this time, calm but serious. Your son tried to file for emergency guardianship over you, he said. Claimed you're mentally declining and that your neighbors are taking advantage of your finances. He submitted it to a probate judge in St. Charles. That hit hard. It meant Marcus wasn't just being emotional or lashing out. He was trying to take everything. He wanted control of my trust, my house, my bank accounts. He was hoping a judge would believe that I was senile, maybe too weak to handle money, and that he, the son who put me on a bus like I was trash, should take over. But here's what he didn't know. Every conversation I had with Doris, Pete, and even my primary care doctor, documented. Every message Marcus had sent begging for money, printed and saved. Every Facebook post his in-laws made trashing me, archived. And Rick? He was a damn pit bull in court. When the hearing came around, I showed up with Rick and 3 character witnesses, Doris, Pete, and Reverend Chase from my church. Marcus showed up alone. Lila wasn't there. I found out later she'd had another seizure the week before and was in a full-time care facility now. Marcus had quit one of his jobs to look after her and was barely hanging on financially. He looked older than me that day, hollow, but I didn't feel sorry for him. Not after what he tried to pull. Rick laid everything out. The abandonment, the bus ride, the cold futon room, the false reports to Adult Protective Services, the attempt to use a health crisis to force money out of me. He even showed the judge the paperwork Marcus filed, trying to make himself guardian without my knowledge. Then Rick handed the judge a sealed envelope. Inside was a copy of a letter I had written the week I got back from Marcus's house. I had written it before any of this happened, just to get my feelings out. I had signed it, dated it, and left it with Rick in case I ever forgot what they did. The judge read the letter silently. Then he looked up and said, I see no reason for guardianship. In fact, Mr. Marcus, if you file anything else like this again without cause, I'll hold you in contempt. I thought that would be the end of it. But karma had more coming. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail, certified. It was from Lila's insurance company. Apparently, after she lost her job, Marcus had tried to backdate some documents to make it look like she was still employed for a few extra weeks to keep coverage longer. He signed her name. Someone reported it. Insurance fraud. Then 2 months after that, I got a phone call from Rick again. He was laughing. Guess who's being audited by the IRS, he said. Turns out Marcus had tried to write off their home care expenses as business deductions under some side job he never actually worked. Filed fake documents for tax breaks. The IRS caught it. And they don't mess around. Between the fraud, the failed guardianship, and the tax audit, Marcus's life imploded. He had to sell the house. Move in with Lila's parents. Her condition got worse. She needed round-the-clock help and there was no more caregiver money. Marcus tried applying for disability, but that takes time. Months, sometimes years. In the meantime, he was broke, stuck, and desperate. I didn't call him. I didn't send a dime. But I did one last thing. I went back to Rick and changed my will again. I left everything, my house, my pension, my car, my savings to the local veterans home and to Doris and Pete, who had actually been there when I needed someone. I wrote one last letter and left it with Rick to be read when I'm gone. It said, to Marcus, you had a father who loved you, who gave you everything he could. You had one chance to do the right thing. You failed. So now you get nothing. That bus ride you put me on? That was the last stop. And that's it. I still can't drive. My hands still shake. But I get up every morning, I drink my coffee, I walk my block, and I live in peace. I wasn't looking for revenge. But when you let people show you who they are and you believe them, you take back your power. And that's the best revenge there is.